Let's talk about Eric Bieniemy ruffling the feathers of the fragile in Washington, 3 Chiefs players making the top 10 of the NFL's top 100 list, and then look at an article featuring Brett Veach that makes things seem as if a deal is still not close between the Chiefs and Chris Jones. But first, how about those? All right, first up, the NFL's top 100 list, voted on by the players, concluded last night with the Chiefs having 0 players ranked in the top 100 through 11. And I think they missed the mark here with at least not having Creed Humphrey, maybe even Nick Bolton, Snead, Joe Toney, any of those guys? None of them are in the top 100? That's freaking crazy. However, the 3 players that were named in the top 100 were all in the top 10, with those 3 being Chris Jones in there at number 10, his best ever in the top 100 with his previous high being 34th in 2021. Then at number 5 was Travis Kelce, his 8th time making the top 100 and his 3rd consecutive season being ranked in the top 10. And number 1, of course, was QB1 Patrick Mahomes, who led the league in passing yards and touchdowns, winning his 2nd league MVP, 2nd Super Bowl, and 2nd Super Bowl MVP, further proving why he's the greatest QB and player in the game, claiming that number 1 spot on this list for the 2nd time. And since his 1st season as a starter, Mahomes has made the top 10 every year, with his lowest ranking being 8th last season, which was a borderline felony charge, in my opinion, to have him that low. But hey, there you have it. Only 3 Chiefs players made the list this season, but they were all 3 in the top 10, which is only the 2nd time a team has had 3 players in the top 10, with the Rams doing it last year for the first time when Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, and Cooper Kupp all made it. Next up, camp practice time. Today was the 8th padded camp practice in the last 12 days. Practice number 14 overall, and the team is currently gearing up for their first preseason game this upcoming Sunday against the Saints, which I will be doing a live play-by-play reaction live stream on the channel if you want to swing through and hang out. But speaking of the Saints, it's worth bringing up they brought former Chiefs running back Kareem Hunt in for a visit, which honestly makes complete sense given the fact that Alvin Kamara is suspended for the first few games of the season. However, he didn't sign with them just yet and plans to visit with the Colts on Wednesday. Another former Chief and offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy is also making his rounds in the news. Apparently, he's running a very tough camp with the Commanders and is being himself, i.e. asking for perfection and making sure players know when they mess up. And head coach Ron Rivera said some players early on in camp were, quote, a little concerned about the pace of practice under EB. He then told players to talk to EB, and those convos were enlightening. I mean, come on now. Bieniemy is coming from the hardest camp out there with Andy Reid, and it's probably a good thing practices are hard for the Commanders. They've been a dumpster fire for quite a while. Bieniemy even told the media today, he said it's nothing personal with the players, but winning is personal, and that's why he was brought in, to help this team win, and that's what he plans on helping the team do to the best of his ability. Tyreek Hill actually responded to these reports saying, man, there is no other coach that has your back like EB. Take that coaching and get better. We've all been through. It's tough, but I promise you will make it. And McCole Hardman responded to that as well, saying, I promise. Well, while it's all true, it's funny to see Commanders players over there going through a complete culture shock, and it brings me pure joy to see EB going after it and after players. Anyway, back to practice. As far as those who didn't practice today, there were only a few. Tight end Jody Fortson missed his 9th practice, I believe, now due to dislocating his shoulder. L'Jarius Sneed missed his 6th consecutive practice due to inflammation in his knee. Kadarius Toney is, of course, still out as he recovers from that knee cleanup he had early last week. And then running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire was sick. A quick note on Toney, though. Adam Teicher from ESPN dropped an article yesterday. I talked about it briefly last night on what he said about Chris Jones, but Veach also seems optimistic that both Isaiah Pacheco and Kadarius Toney are going to be ready week 1. That's a little surprising to me if Kadarius Toney is indeed ready and a full go for week 1, even though his knee cleanup was minor. Time will tell, but I didn't mention that to you guys yesterday, so I thought you should at least know that Brett Veach recently said, barring any setbacks, they think Kadarius Toney is good to return for week 1. Anyway, back to CEH being sick. It's interesting considering he missed a day or 2 last week due to sickness as well, but hopefully it's just something minor. And with CEH out due to sickness, Deneric Prince has been getting a ton of reps, which is nothing but good for him. Aside from those players, though, it looks like everyone else practiced today, even Cornell Powell, who missed yesterday for a reason I could not figure out. It was never announced. He was back today working and could even be seen out there snagging this pass from Shane Buechele. Powell did a nice job grabbing that pass. It was thrown slightly behind him as he was crossing the middle of the field. Nice work by Powell. who will probably end up on the practice squad once again. More on practice highlights later, though, as running back Isaiah Pacheco is still out there in his yellow jersey as he gets closer and closer to being a full go, and defensive tackle Turk Wharton is still out there working and preparing for a comeback after tearing his ACL last year, who could once again be seen out there with the first team nod on the D-line as the Chiefs went back into team drills, which is no real surprise. I mean, when healthy, he's a guy that's either starting or working in frequently. Another defensive tackle that is still not out there is none other than Chris Jones, which is still no surprise considering he's been holding out all of training camp so far during the contract negotiations between him and the Chiefs. I will say, though, running back Dalvin Cook shared a video of him working out today, and while I have no idea where this is, I'm pretty sure that's Chris Jones hanging out there in the background, so hey, at least he's training, I guess. Anyway, we got a little bit of an update from Brett Veach yesterday, late afternoon, from Jesse Newell of the KC Star. He shared that Veach is still wanting to get a deal done with Chris Jones. Quote, he's a great player and he wants a big contract. He deserves a big contract, and I don't think there's any surprises in that regard, but there's just some hurdles we have to work through in regards to how we can keep this thing going for the short and long term. But we've never wavered on, this is a guy we want to exhaust all our efforts to get done because that's how much we think of him. Well, Chris Jones also thinks highly of KC as well. I mean, he just tweeted this out today, KC, ... I love you. And what does this mean, you might ask? Well, your guess is as good as mine. He's tweeted something out like this several times before, so again, it could mean absolutely nothing. Anyway, Veach goes on to say that part of the reason they traded Tyreek was with Chris Jones and a new deal with him in mind, saying it was, quote, one of the determining factors. He emphasized they have no plans of trading Jones ahead of the season and noted the best resolution would be for him to end his career as a Chief. Quote, hopefully we get this resolved, but we have no intentions of making a trade. And it looks like prior to camp, talks between KC and Chris Jones's representation was a daily extensive conversation. But now, Veach said both parties have sort of taken a step back to take a deep breath and reset a little bit. Talks are less frequent right now, but with the season starting on September 7th, they will begin heating up the convo again. And Veach once again reiterated that the intent and desire has always been to get Chris Jones secured for the foreseeable future. And quote, we're going to press on with that mindset. Well, there you go. The desire is there, but is the pocketbook? Money talks after all. I mean, of course, the debate between both sides is probably a number of things on the deal. The number of years, the amount of guarantees, the average per year as well. And with both sides stepping back to regroup, I would take that as there was possibly some frustration there and they weren't that close on numbers. So they step back to regroup, but hopefully they get it figured out one way or another before the start of the season, because if I am growing weary of all of this, I know you guys are as well. And with all that being said, where do you guys currently lean on the Chris Jones situation? When do you think a deal gets done, if at all? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Next up, with L'Jarius Sneed still out, it looks like it's Trent McDuffie and Joshua Williams out there again, with Jalen Watson coming in on the nickel. This is exactly what they did yesterday as well. Watson spoke briefly to the media today, saying his goal right now going into year 2 is simple. He just wants to stay consistent and show the coaches as well as his teammates they can trust him more times than not. Jalen Watson also had a very nice 1v1 rep here against Sky Moore. Speaking of the man, a definite positive rep from him here. Another nice defensive win was Trent McDuffie breaking up this pass from Mahomes intended for MVS. Coach Spags said he expects great things from the secondary this year, with most of them going into year 2, but that's exactly it. The expectations from him are indeed higher now since they are no longer rookies. He wants the defense this weekend to focus on tackling and preventing the big plays, because you have to do those things first before you even think about being any good. Spags also complimented rookie defensive end Felix Anudike-Uzomah, saying he's looking a lot more comfortable out there. Guys are nicked up, yes, but he's kind of earned it with more reps, and therefore his overall snap count has been going up. And you can see Felix here going at it with offensive tackle Wanya Morris. Young guy versus young guy. Next up, Spags then said Brian Cook is going to become the quarterback of the defense, at least in the secondary, with he and Nick Bolton out there getting everybody lined up. Nick Bolton spoke to the media today as well, saying that this training camp is much better from a communication standpoint. Everybody feels more comfortable out there flying around. And he also noted that going against players like 87 and 15 only makes you better. Quote, we know Kelce is the best in the game and he's really earned that recognition. Well, Nick Bolton out here spitting facts. And then for some offensive standouts, Mahomes connected nicely here with Rice as pressure forced him to step up in the pocket, finding him for 6. And initially I was like, wow, That was a nice play. And it was, for the offense. Nice throw from Mahomes, though he might have been sacked right there by McDuffie. However, I was not impressed to see defensive end Mike Danna out there in coverage on wide receiver Rashee Rice. Mike Danna on Rashee Rice, you got to cut that out, Spags, right away. Anyway, speaking of Rice, there was a minor scare earlier at practice when Rice went down after a route in the red zone. He came up limping off the field, so you don't like to see that. However, he returned shortly after and finished the workout, so it appears that he's all good. Something else that was good was this leaping grab made by tight end Isaiah Gathings, one of those. He went up for a Buechele ball and came down with the impressive completion. Gathings is a UDFA from Middle Tennessee State that the Chiefs signed back on July 30th when Fortson dislocated his shoulder. He's most likely a camp body, but shoot, if he keeps making plays like this, how about the practice squad? I like that. Next up, here's a clip of the speedy running back Deneric Prince on an outside run up the left sideline, once again showing off his quickness. Pacheco was out there looking quick as ever as well, catching this ball from Chris O down the sideline. Wide receiver Ty Scott had a great play here, stretching out for a pretty solid pass from Shane Buechele as he crossed the field. Then Amir Smith-Marset had a nice rep as he bobbled this pass after winning his route, but managed to haul it in before stepping out of bounds. And then what would a camp practice be without an absolute laser from Mahomes as he hits Sky here in tight coverage, threading the needle right between Nick Bolton and Willie Gay Jr. And I'm sure we're going to see plenty more throws like this one at tomorrow's practice and the practices to follow, which is why until next time, all I got to say is let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?